So, former Green Deputy Leader Shahara Ali has described the Green Party as monstrous in a recent article on Spiked. It took the group Think Authoritarians almost another year to have me removed in 2022. They said I had, quote unquote, championed a highly controversial position on trans rights that was allegedly incompatible with acting as a spokesperson. I encountered that my sensible positions on keeping rapists out of the female prison estate and prohibiting rogue online clinics from dispensing puberty blockers to kids were not just compatible with party policy, but required by it too. As a spokesperson for justice, I was also duty bound to articulate these positions. He then goes on talking about how he took the party to court for unlawful, gender critical discrimination that he won in 2024, but describes it as extraordinarily stressful. He even says that he was prepared to risk all in the pursuit of justice, including bankruptcy and destitution. Anyway, he continues. To this day, you will find Green Party leader Zach Polanski and MP Ellie Chown spreading disinformation about my court victory. They absurdly claim that the judgment showed that political parties have a right to remove spokespeople. The judge could not have been more clear. Dr. Ali also seeks a declaration that he has been subjected to unlawful discrimination. I grant the declaration sought, although it does not obviate the need for damages. I'm not through with the unhinged Green Party yet, but that's because I care about politics. It is now facing a second court case from me later this year on substantially the same grounds of unlawful discrimination, including victimisation, the safeguarding of women and girls, single-sex services, protections and opportunities, alongside the protection of children from the unconscionable harms of rogue, quote-unquote, gender-affirming medical malpractice, are hills worth dying on. I also regard it as my duty to expose the monster that the party has become. The almost daily revelations about the anti-Semitic bile, whether historic or recent, perpetrated by a slew of its local election candidates, are testament to how far the Greens have fallen. The hypocrisy of the leadership is seeking to stop a Zionism is racism motion from being voted on at conference, when they have fed and facilitated hardline Islamic entryism, is evidence of its further hard left totalitarian rot. Long one, I'm sorry guys, but then he then concludes by saying this. The Green Party has always talked about doing politics differently. That once was the case in a good way, but now it's become so in a bad way. A political party that acts as an authoritarian law unto itself and that is seeking to govern the UK is a menace to society. I don't know, Ali. Tell me you're bitter without telling me you're bitter. It's just giving bitter. Ali's argument is essentially that the Green Party has become intolerant, authoritarian, and hostile to internal dissent. But why is the attack happening at the moment? The Green Party is becoming a serious party, so it just feels like it's all happening at a convenient time. There is a level of irony calling the Green Party monstrous, but you really have to look at what he's saying here, because I would regard what Ali's saying as monstrous. A transphobe. He's trying to frame himself as a victim of ideological persecution, but calling the boxer Iman Khalifa him, which he does in the article, who are the actual victims here? Like, truly. Ali's central claim is that he was unlawfully discriminated against by the Green Party because of his gender-critical beliefs. And it's true that in 2024, the court ruled that the Green Party had acted in a procedurally unfair way when removing him as a spokesperson. But that much is factually correct. But Ali's article relies on a slate of, hand, because he presents that procedural ruling as though it vindicates the political substance of his position. But it doesn't. The court found procedural unfairness. It did not declare that his politics was correct. The way he's skewing it is really quite cruel. It's fucking awful. It's not aligned with the values of the Green Party. In fact, the court explicitly upheld the right of political parties to remove spokespeople whose public positions conflict with party policy, provided they do so fairly. And I think that's the crucial distinction Ali repeatedly blurs, because blurring it seems useful to him without making him seem innocent. I think that blurring tells you something very, very paramount about the way that Ali is conducting himself, because Ali's politics on trans issues are not some neutral, abstract, philosophical disagreement. He's a fucking transphobe. They are political interventions into the lives of trans people, and those interventions have material consequences. When Ali says the disgusting things about keeping rapists out of women's prisons, what he's doing is invoking one of the oldest rhetorical devices in reactionary politics. Shadow boxing this harm that's never going to happen, barely happens, taking an extreme criminal category and using it to define an entire marginalized group. He describes the Green Party as fanatical and authoritarian and monstrous and totalitarian. And all I'm seeing is an attempt to delegitimize the Green Party. It's so pathetic. It's actually feeble. It's pathetic. It's feeble. Doing this from the sidelines, by the way, like screaming, like, hey, so they did this to me and they did that to me because my opinion is blah, blah, blah. Like, grow up. Wear a helmet. Wear a fucking helmet. You don't align with the Green Party, obviously. Political parties are and should be voluntary democratic associations. So it is up to the party to define the values that they are rooted in. So, Ali, if the Green Party it increasingly views trans inclusion as a core ethical commitment and a fundamental human right, then the conflict with this politics is not evidence of authoritarianism, it's evidence of political incompatibility. Anyway, enough of my ranting. I'm keen to get Kevin's ranting on all of this. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I genuinely think there needs to be scientific research into why certain people find transphobia so addictive. It's essentially a drug to these people, and much like addiction to narcotics or alcohol or anything like that, it's destructive to these people's lives. It's destructive to the people around them and to wider society, but it's destructive to their own lives. One only needs to look at the way in which someone like Graham Linehan went from being a very successful, rich, celebrated comedy writer to now sitting drunkenly in his pants typing on Twitter about how this latest bit of transphobic muck, and his wife is off with somebody else and his kids aren't interested in him, and so on. His entire life has been completely turned upside down because of his addiction to transphobia. And I get this similar impression from this individual, who I was previously unaware of as a person who existed until this story sort of broke. But was clearly someone who was, a reasonably high up person in a major political party, and is now just screaming from the sidelines because the one thing that they can't break is their addiction to being hateful towards trans people, and that's really all it is. It's an addiction to being transphobic. It's they will literally take their previous political alignments and completely redraw everything on the basis that the one thing they can never let go of is fuck trans people. And sometimes quite literally because they're also chasers, but that's a different matter entirely. They will literally go from being like economically left wing to economically right wing. They will go from being anti-war to pro-war. They will go from being anti-misogyny to pro-misogyny, etc., on the basis of just that one thing, that one core idea that they can never let go. And ultimately, this the conflation you drew, or the conflation you underlined from this person, saying that the court case was a vindication of their politics. This is a thing that transphobes will always do. Whenever they get some kind of legal case that rules in their favour, it's almost always based around some kind of procedural motion or some sort of problem with the system. But what they do is take that and use that as a vindication of everything, including the most extreme beliefs that they have, up to and including the thing you mentioned there about their invoking of the trope of, the trans terror in prisons and such, forgetting, of course, or knowing full well and choosing to pretend to be ignorant of the fact that trans people are by far more likely to be the victims of, rather than the perpetrators of, sexual abuse, both inside and outside of prisons.
Exactly.
The threat to women is not trans people, it's
Yeah.
cis men. It
Yeah.
always has been, it always will be, because trans people aren't that way by and large. Again, you can always pluck out one or two individual instances, but statistically speaking, trans people are not your threat. It's cis men. And who exactly is funding the transphobic movement in the UK? It's largely cis men who are evangelical Christians in the United States.
Yep. It's also it's getting really boring, actually, like this boring transphobic rhetoric. Like, it's
Yeah.
fucking tiring. I think in March 2025 there were over 3,500 reported cases recorded by the police of hate crimes towards the transgender community. And you know what's even more scary about that is that that probably isn't even an accurate figure, because it's probably a lot higher than that. Because statistically, like you said, rightfully so, trans people, particularly trans women, are more likely to be victims of crime and harm. Like, they are the
Yeah.
ones that will be victims
I've always,
victims of
yeah,
that.
I'm always reticent to mention specific numbers, especially when they come from the police, given the police is, let's
True.
say, penchant for raping themselves, but also for not giving a fuck about the victims of rape, up to and including the point where the vast majority of sexual assault goes completely unreported. And whilst we can have an educated guess based on research as to the actual extent of the problem, we'll never truly know because the authorities have no interest in ever tackling the problem because the people in authority are themselves sexual abusers. Again, to go back to Rupert Lowe for just a second, if you want to look for a den of iniquity filled with sexual abusers who use their power to engage in abuse, you're sat in a room with them. The House of
Exactly.
Commons, the House of Lords, the research is there. Sexual abuse is absolutely rampant amongst these people, as indeed, by the way, is all manner of other things, including Rupert. You were elected as a Reform Member of Parliament alongside a person who had a conviction for domestic abuse. So again, look inwards is what I would suggest.
Bun fucking Rupert low. Like I keep saying this, like if you really want to aim low in life, like vote low. But you're so right. You're so right. There's so many things that you've said that are just incredibly correct. And when people like oh my god, why can I not say his name today? Shahara Ali,
Yeah.
frame trans people, but trans women particularly. It's
Mm.
always trans women they focus on, so much so.
Yeah.
Primarily through this lens of risk, whether it's prisons, so it's prisons, bathrooms, violence. They invert the empirical reality because trans women, like you rightfully said, are statistically more likely to be targets of gendered violence than perpetrators of it. And this is where I want the focus to be. Like, if
Yeah.
you are so passionate about the violence that is in our streets, the violence that's being upheld in institutions, even violent rhetoric, because it's not just bang, 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 it really is the way that people talk to one another,
Yeah.
then really claim that. Really claim that you care about wanting to mitigate the violence happening to our communities. Because what I'm finding is that they are targeting minority people that have minority power every single time. The punching down is getting tiring. Why
Yeah.
do people consistently punch down?
Well,
Why?
because it's easier to punch down on someone who can't fight back, I suppose. But
Mm,
the point I wanted to make about prisons, if they actually cared about violence against prisoners, they wouldn't be looking towards trans people. In fact, they would be looking towards both the actual acts itself, but also the societal, not just acceptance, but promotion of rape by cis men in prisons. It's not just seen as a problem that's a part of the system. It's actively encouraged. It's seen as part of the punishment. The whole "don't drop the soap" line is an absolutely
mm,
ubiquitous experience of people talking about and thinking about the way in which prisons operate. And yet, I don't hear a single word from any of these people about that, which is an absolute rife epidemic and has been seen as part of the situation, or in fact the number of sexual assaults and indeed up to and including impregnations of women in prisons by prison staff. That's not mentioned.
never
That
spoken
that's
about.
irrelevant. Even though, of course, be given the power dynamic and the fact that the person can't leave that situation, you can't really have an informed consent situation. So literally every single incident there would be at least sexual assault, if not outright rape. But that's not to be mentioned because that can't be used to weaponize against trans people.